So I'd like to finally welcome you all to the top 15 movies of 2024. This was an extremely bad year. Let me start off with that. Because if you don't know, this was supposed to come out yesterday, but I literally had not seen enough good films in order to make a top 15 list for the year. No, really, I have a community post and everything. You can go check that out. But now I forced myself to try and find as many decent or at least mediocre movies as possible to get to a top 15. There are a few honorable mentions, but they're ones I didn't get to see because I can't find a way to find them currently without spending like $20 to watch it. And there's one on here that I did see, but doesn't really count. So the two I didn't get to see were Sound of Hope and City of Dreams, both of which were big anti-leftist movies that I didn't get around to seeing because, well, with Sound of Hope, I no longer have a Daily Wire subscription because of all the crap that they pulled with Candace Owens and Brett Cooper, though I will probably get one back when they release their Snow White movie. And City of Dreams, I just couldn't find anywhere. I couldn't find it. It wasn't playing near me when it was in theaters. I had trouble. I couldn't find it on streaming. I couldn't even find it on fucking DVD. So, yeah, that was also a no-go. And the honorable mention that I did see is the Daily Wire's Am I Racist? Because I still had the subscription at the time. And the reason it didn't make the list, the only reason it didn't make the list, might I add, is because it's a documentary, and usually I don't even review documentaries at all, but I especially felt like it shouldn't really be put among the rest of these films. So yeah, those are the honorable mentions, and let's get into the top 15 films of the year by default. A movie that sadly does work better on paper than it does in practice, The Abandoned was a movie I was very much looking forward to on its concept alone. And what they do with the concept for a little while does work. Unfortunately, it's this low on the list because it does drag out quite a bit, and after about the 45-minute mark, there's really nothing new to be added. But this is definitely carried by its concept, some interesting visuals, and the very strong performances from our two main leads, which is mostly impressive considering one of them doesn't even show up on screen for basically the entirety of the movie. But the main reason that this movie dropped was due to its ending, and this will not be the last time I say this on this list. This is another movie that's really carried by its concept and some very strong performances out of the entire cast. Seriously, the casting for this movie and the acting out of everybody is fantastic, and again, I really like the concept of this. Unfortunately, the movie is, again, this low on the list due to some unlikable characters and a pretty stupid ending. But up until that point, I was pretty invested in the story that juror number 2 was telling. The idea that one of the jury members could possibly be at fault for the murder that he's subjected to serving jury duty for is a very interesting idea, but I don't think the movie went all the way with it, hence it being near the bottom of the list. The third movie in a row on this list that had an incredibly awesome concept, but was slightly squandered by mediocre execution. My main problem with this film is that not a lot happens throughout the majority of it, and the trailers did make it seem like it was going to be some pretty cool action film, and there was virtually no action to be had whatsoever. But once again, it's carried by some very strong performances, not just out of the main leads, but out of everybody in the cast, and I do like the idea this movie goes for, and I like the commentary that it brings to the forefront, but again, this is a movie that feels like it doesn't go all the way with what it wants. Once again, hence it being near the bottom of the list. A lot of people will probably just tell you this is nothing more than just another retelling of the Nativity story, but it's been mostly Hollywoodized. They'd be right, of course, but I don't really see why that's inherently a bad thing. We have a ton of adaptations of A Christmas Carol, and those always seem to get a pass, because those are usually pretty good, so as long as the movie itself is good, I don't really see why it being another adaptation of something is really a problem. Another movie carried by great performances, with the standout being Anthony Hopkins as the villain, who's not in the movie as much as I was hoping, but he is definitely the standout in this film, and I like how they tell the Nativity story following following Mary instead of it starting with the nativity and then following Jesus. Trying to do the entire story is what I'm trying to get at here. But yeah, there are issues with this movie, and again, mostly with how it kind of is Hollywoodized. But again, as long as the movie is well written, which it is, I don't really see why that has to be a bad thing. I know plenty of people are going to make fun of me for this pick, and you know what? Go right ahead, because I really don't care. This movie is what Hollywood is missing, and that's innocent fun. I don't care if this is a kids movie, because that doesn't have to mean it's automatically shit, because that is an argument that's being made a lot. It's deflection for shitty movies that's aimed at all people, so they just brush it off by saying it's a kid's movie. Although I guess I'm doing it in reverse here by saying it doesn't have to be shit, but that's exactly my point. The performances are all fun. I like the story idea of this kind of being a sequel to the book, while also being the book itself. It's really weird how they do it. The villain is kind of fun, and as long as you can get through the stupid fish out of water scenes that you've seen 1,000 times before and are just as cringy and hard to watch here, you probably will have a decent time with this. Again, you do have to get through some cringy scenes, but if you can, I think you'll enjoy your time with this, or your kids at least will. While I would say this is easily the weakest of the trilogy, Venom: The Last Dance is still a pretty fun ride. While I didn't particularly care for the subplot involving the Doctor, which made no sense and had virtually no bearing on the story, and Noel being a giant cock tease, I still had a lot of fun with this. The chemistry between Tom Hardy and, well, Tom Hardy is still on point. When it actually has action, it's a lot of fun, and the special effects are probably the best this franchise has had. And even if you didn't like this movie, it looks like a masterpiece compared to Madame Web. One of the first times I'm glad marketing was deceiving. The trailers pretty much focused on nothing but the Super Minions, or Mega Minions, or whatever the hell they were called, and featured Gru in basically a couple of shots in each trailer, and made the movie look like nothing more than Minions 3, and looked pretty bad. Thankfully, that ended up being in reverse. Gru was at the focal front of the film, and the Mega Minions were in the movie for all about 2 minutes and don't really do much. Well, Will Ferrell was as annoying as he usually is. The voice acting was a lot of fun, the animation's still great, and I did like the idea for this story. Again, this is another one that doesn't really go all the way with what it's doing, like especially with the dilemmas the kids are going through, only kind of appear once or twice in the film and don't really amount to much. I still had a lot of fun with this, and I think most people did too. Garfield is the kind of adaptation I like. It pays homage to the source material and doesn't completely just throw it away, but also tries to do its own thing with the character, and that's exactly what it does. It is yet another heist film, and I'm getting really freaking sick of heist movies, but I like the dynamic he has with his father, Vic. I think the voice acting is all great, and Odie is still the best character in this entire franchise, and I don't think that'll ever change. And if the live-action piece of shit can get a sequel, this one really should too. Even if it wasn't the biggest hit at the box office, give us another film. I'd be totally open to seeing a sequel. Finally, a movie for the masculine crowd. If you went and saw this movie in the theater like I did, you probably weren't going for the story or some deep message or whatnot. You're going for the action to watch Kraven the Hunter kick ass and spray blood everywhere. And that's exactly what you're gonna get with this film, but I did get a little more than I was expecting. I did like the homages to other comic book characters, like the Foreigner and Miles Warren and the Chameleon, and I like they went all the way with that eventually, instead of just being a giant tease like most other movies did. I'm looking at you, Madame Web. I liked the Rhino as a villain for the most part. I think his CGI was a little rough, but that was kind of expected with this film. And again, this is just a movie. I got what I came for. I came for the action, I came for the gore, and that's exactly what I got. I'll admit, I was wrong about this one. I really thought this was going to be terrible, but Can you blame me? Pixar hasn't made a legitimately good film in about a decade, so why should I have anticipated this being any good? But it was, and I'm definitely happy about that. This is definitely a sequel that, even though it does kind of repeat the plot of the first film, it evolves all of the characters in a very natural way. And I like the ways it handles Riley growing up with these new emotions. They didn't try to force anything, it all felt pretty natural. Although, I will say, the weirdest thing that I found out about this movie is that Disney, not Pixar, saved this movie from basically turning into woke slop. Does that mean Disney's learning their lesson? Absolutely not. I sure as hell know it was a panic move, but it paid off, and I'll take what I can get at this point. I've already said it, but I'm gonna say it again. The thing Hollywood is missing the most nowadays is fun. Everything has to be an overly serious movie, or it has to be some political slop. This movie was neither of those things. It came here to entertain the audience for 2 hours, and it definitely did that. I haven't been the biggest fan of this director's previous work. I wasn't the biggest fan of Bullet Train. I thought Deadpool 2 was an incredibly lackluster sequel, even if I didn't think it was either of those movies were outright bad. This one is definitely the best of those three films. Great performances from Gosling, Blunt, and Taylor-Johnson, and I really like the plot for this film, even if the twist was incredibly obvious. I don't care if a movie is predictable as long as it's entertaining, and that's exactly what this film is. It sucks this movie flopped so bad because, again, this is one of the few legitimately great films we got in 2024. I will admit that the only reason I was really interested in this film in the first place was due to the director being director Wes Ball, who made the 3 Maze Runner films. But holy hell, he did a phenomenal job with this film. And I have seen the other Planet of the Apes films by now, and this one is easily one of my favorites. I love how the Ape Society is evolving throughout this rebooted series, because this is not a prequel series, let's be perfectly honest. This is a full-on reboot, but I did enjoy it, and thankfully the female lead wasn't either annoying or just here to be some girl boss political agenda written character. She actually was pretty interesting. I like the main character, Noah. He's a very likable protagonist, and this does follow some of the generic story beats you'd expect for a movie like this, but I had a ton of fun with this film. From the director of the Sweet Life movie, we get a great telling of Ronald Reagan's life, with a phenomenal performance from Dennis Quaid, some great supporting actors, including David Henry, who I have not seen in much since Wizards of Waverly Place, and he finally seems to slowly be getting back into acting. This movie got a ton of heat for being a, what's the word I'm looking for, glossy telling of Reagan's life. I guess that's the word I'm looking for. Yet those are the same people that give The Apprentice a pass for making shit up about Donald Trump's life. Yeah, that's not politically driven whatsoever. If you combine the Indiana Jones and the Magnificent Seven, you get this movie, and that is a compliment in every single sense. Again, just like Kraven the Hunter, this is a movie for the masculine crowd, which is something that is being slowly burned by Hollywood nowadays. You're not here for a deep story. You're not here for a deep message. You're here for some masculine dudes and a hot chick kicking the shit out of Nazis. And that's exactly what you're gonna get out of this film. And it is a ton of fun to watch. And again, just because I say you're not coming for the story doesn't mean the story is bad. In fact, this is a very interesting story. This was easily one of my most anticipated films of the year, and I absolutely loved it. Guy Ritchie's really growing on me as a director after the Aladdin remake, and then The Covenant, and now this. Be honest. Did a single fucking one of you think it was going to be anything other than Deadpool and Wolverine? If it was, I'm honestly shocked, because you all know how much I loved this film. This is a perfect threequel for the Deadpool franchise. A great return for Hugh Jackman's Wolverine. It's the only MCU film we got this year, which does kind of suck, but considering we're getting 3 next year, I think it's a decent trade-off. And it's also a decent trade-off as this movie was absolutely phenomenal. The humor was on point. The action sequences were amazing. The acting out of everybody was just as outstanding as pretty much any other Marvel project. This is what the MCU should be. Not whatever the fuck What If Season 3 was. Yes, I'm doing a video on that eventually. Not She-Hulk, not the Marvels. Movies like this are what Marvel fans want. And Shawn Levy delivered in spades. And I really hope we get a 4th film, as long as they don't fuck it up. Well, there you have it, my top 15 films of 2024. I know this list might have been a little disappointing, as, like I said, a lot of the movies on this list ranged from okay to mediocre. Hell, Despicable Me 4, which ended up in 9th place, I gave a C+. That tells you just how bad this year was in cinema. But you better believe that the next video, when we get to the bottom 15, I will have no shortage of picks. So yeah, that's all I got. Leave your ranking down below if there's anything I missed that you thought I should check out, or if there's probably plenty of you that'll complain about some of the movies on this list, but I really don't care, so you can proceed to yell at nobody. So that's all I got, and I will see you all next time. Bye.